So hello, everybody. Chag Sameach, post Chag Sameach, and it's wonderful to have you. This is for those that are tuning in for the first time, this is actually the 13th month of the Maccabi USA Sports Show that Donna and I have the privilege of co-hosting every 2 weeks. And we have had some incredible national Jewish guests joining us for the last year, and have three wonderful guests today that we'll introduce in just a second. Today is a bit of a special edition. We normally do this show on Tuesday nights, but given the time difference with Israel, we've moved it up to noon Central Time today. And it is special because it's the first time really that Maccabi has co-partnered with other national Jewish organizations. For those that may not be aware of who Maccabi USA is, it is a wonderful organization that develops pride in Judaism through sports. It's really the only organization in the country that combines Judaism and sports. And it hosts many major events, the most recognized and important of which is the Maccabi, which is held every 4 years in Israel. And I invite all of you next July in 2022 to come to Israel. And if you've never been to a Maccabi, it is unbelievable. I can only say that. It's a treat. But we have some great partners joining us today. In addition to Maccabi USA, we're very honored to have the Anti-Defamation League, the national office, joining us, and their Israel director, that I'll introduce in a second, as well as the Jewish Federation of Milwaukee. We're so excited to have Milwaukee represented, which is the hometown of one of our guests today, and also the Jewish Federation in New Orleans that I head, and our brand new Center for Jewish Multicultural Affairs in New Orleans, which is a groundbreaking center within the Federation movement. So we're thrilled to have all of you. I'm going to ask first Carole Nuriel, who is the director in Israel of the Anti-Defamation League, to say a few words, and followed by Rabbi Hannah from Milwaukee, and Rabbi Wallach, if you will say a few words after Carole, that would be great, and then Don and I will kick it off. Carole?
Thank you very much, Arnie, and good evening from the city of Modi'in, Israel. Shalom, everybody. It's an honor to be here with all of you and talk about two very important topics which are so intertwined: sports and social change. So I've been privileged to lead the ADL Israel office for the last 5 years, and our main mission has always been to make a difference and to lead others in society to make a difference. And ADL Israel and ADL in the US have identified, as many other individuals and organizations, sports as a very effective tool and field to create a social change. Sports as an equalizer. Sports is a very popular field that speaks to all classes and groups in societies, and specifically here in Israel, the competitive sports community as an illustration of the nation's diversity, including a representation of all races, faith, sexual orientations, and socioeconomic backgrounds. So you're going to see it, I guess, in the event this evening. But after identifying sports as an important mechanism, the immediate question is how to do it right. And this is a question we really struggled with. And I'll answer this question very briefly by presenting to you a program we have launched here in Israel 2 years ago, entitled A League of Respect, which is building on ADL Israel's work to promote social cohesion in Israel, inclusion, and diversity. The program is really aimed at creating, I would say, a new common language of respect and tolerance internally in football clubs, with the hope that such an internal change will have an effect on the wider sports community and then also in the general public. So what we have done was to approach what's considered to be the toughest cookie in Israel's football arena, Beitar Yerushalayim, who are known for not having diversity among players, namely not having an Arab player, and having a somehow racist fan base, at least the hardcore of it. So we approached the management and offered an educational program that includes sessions for what ADL considered as the Holy Triangle, the trainers, as the role models, as leaders, the trainees, and the parents. By working holistically, we believe that there's better chances that the common language be internalized among all parts of the club. It was a huge success. We don't have time to go into details, but it was really hailed by all levels involved, and all of it was supported by the owner, who is so committed, Moshe Hogeg. And I think that that's key to the success of such a program, having the management committed to a real change. So hopefully when COVID becomes a history for all of us, we will scale it up and work with more football clubs in Israel. And let me just end by mentioning that ADL really has a strong history of collaboration with the sports community, with the NBA when we launched the Respect is the Way to Play campaign. And then in 2017, when we established a National Sports Leadership Council in the US. So we really look for ways to make a difference for sports, and hopefully being part of this conversation now with you will even provoke more thinking for all of us here in ADL and even for Maccabi and maybe together. So thank you, and handing it over to you, Arnie.
All right, Rabbi Wallach, would you like to say a couple words?
Thank you so much. We're very excited to be here. I'm Rabbi Hannah Wallach, Vice President of Outreach Israel and Overseas at the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. We have many partners on this call. We partner with the Anti-Defamation League. We do the on-the-ground audit and reporting of all the anti-Semitic incidents happening across Wisconsin, which are unfortunately increasing. And we're also the first federation to roll out a racial equity task force. And now we'll be working on the national level. So very much connected to the topic of this program. We have a very robust Israel Center with a Partnership Together program around Lake Kinneret and Tiberias. We have the longest running community emissary program in the country. And then, of course, sports is a religion in the state of Wisconsin. So we're thrilled to be here. We're the hometown of Alex Cohen and looking forward to today's program.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, the wonderful Donna Orender, and Donna's going to take it from there.
I am. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Isn't this great on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon? As I just wrote in the chat, I couldn't be more delighted. Marty Rieger would know this. Tal Brody, who, by the way, is on this call, which aside from the three of you, my new favorite athletes, these three women, Tal Brody is like my hero, right? One of the greatest basketball players. Talk about combining social justice, change, right? Kindness and competition. He's just it. But for those of you who don't know, I was a professional basketball player. I was actually one of the first players invited to play in a small little city at the time called Ariel, which now I think is the largest Jewish settlement on the West Bank. One of my regrets is I didn't say yes at the time. I thought I had to be an adult and get home and play. So young women, I have to tell you, I am envious of the lives you are living right now. And they pose such interesting questions for all of us in that you come from all different backgrounds and you're playing in Israel, right? And it's so, and you're all there now. So for everyone know that Alex Cohen, wait, raise your hand. I mean, just say hi. Alex, she's from the US. She played at Northwestern. And now she's played, how many years are you in Israel?
This is my 6th season.
Oh my God. So she's like, she's definitely a Sabra already. And then where's my other girl? Alex Harden. She's from the US.
Hey.
Right? Alex played at, I'm sorry?
Wichita State.
Okay, so she's a shocker, and she actually shocked the whole community there with the quality of her play, got drafted by the WNBA, played a year for the Phoenix Mercury, and then how long have you been in Israel now?
5.
5 years. And happily in there, right? 5 years. If you're there for 5 years, you have to like it, right? You don't come back over and over again if you don't like it, right?
That's true.
Okay, that's good. And then our final player, where are you? Shad Aboud. Shad grew up in Nazareth. How cool is that? Came to the States and played, and I think your coach is on the phone here. Is that possible?
Athletic director.
Oh, your athletic director. I think he's already sending direct messages about little things we could ask you. No, not to make you nervous or anything, Shad. And then you came back to Israel. Both of your parents are coaches, and and how many years have you been playing Israel?
My 4th season.
4 seasons, and you also play on the national team with
Alex.
Alex. Okay. Arnie, I know you want to talk about the Final Four. Do you want to start talking about some of that? I mean, there's just so much happening in women's sports and women's basketball in particular, leading really important social change questions about equity and equality. But where would you like to start?
Yeah, I think, Donna, the last few weeks have been, monumental. Not only from a playing standpoint, I think both the women's and the men's Final Four have been incredible. But as you say, I think, especially what we saw in San Antonio with the women's Final Four, the inequities that existed between the men's and women's game, a spotlight was put on it. And, like you, I'm very hopeful that what ended up being a negative in San Antonio ultimately will be a positive for women's sports in general. But I'm going to start out with just a really easy question. All three of you played collegiate basketball. You were great players. Did you have a chance to watch both the men's and the women's Final Four? And I know the time difference sometimes makes it difficult to watch it live. But I have to say, as much as I was looking forward to last night, I thought it was a disappointment. But Sunday night, the championship game between Arizona and Stanford lived up to its claim, and that was an incredible game. And I saw that the ratings are extremely good. So I'm just kind of curious if you guys follow college basketball still, and what do you think of the Final Fours?
I guess for me, I can start this one. It is, like you said, kind of difficult with the time change. Northwestern was in the tournament this year, so that was really exciting for me. Obviously, my alma mater, got to see them make it to the second round, which was really exciting. Thought they could win that game, but unfortunately couldn't pull it out. But I know in seasons past, I know women's basketball and men's basketball differ a lot with this. You kind of see the higher ranked teams and then the lower ranked teams. There's a big difference in the level of competition. But I think as the years go on, I think they're closing the gap a little bit. And I know in the men's tournament, you see upsets all the time, but in the women's tournaments in the past, it hasn't been so prevalent. And I think that they're starting to be a lot better teams. And there were a lot of upsets this year, which, I mean, as March Madness, it's exciting to see. So that was kind of fun for me to see a lot of upsets, teams, Cinderella teams making it to the farther rounds.
So let me just say this: Alex, Harden, as three professional basketball players in Israel, do you follow the women's collegiate game? Do you follow the WNBA? I'm just curious.
WNBA.
Go ahead, Shad, and then I'll come to you, Alex. How's that? I think we're going to have to help here, Arnie.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we have two Alexes, so that
we
makes
have
it
two
more
Alexes.
complicated.
Yes.
I love basketball in general, so I try to watch as much as I can. With the time difference, sometimes it's hard, but social media covers everything nowadays, and but I enjoy watching college basketball a lot, and obviously WNBA I watch it all the time. I think the Final Four this year was very interesting, and the level was the games were high level. And I was really enjoying seeing how much noise the games were making, like on social media, whether it was like professional athletes tweeting about it or posting on Instagram. I think that helps a lot with the exposure of these young women. And I think it's finally, women basketball in the States is finally starting to get the respect and the recognize that it's supposed to get. So it's always fun to see that.
That's great. And how about you, Alex Harden?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about time difference, but I like watching the game. I think college always adds that little bit of grit that you can't really replicate in the pro game because we're getting paid, but that you're representing your team and you're really competitive. I like this year's whole tournament. Like, I was super excited to see that the Final Four and the championship game were as competitive as the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16. There was very few blowouts, even if the team who was higher seed did win. And WNBA is completely that's our off season. So we watch that all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. That's good. 25th season's coming up. And they said we wouldn't make it. And yet here we are 25 years later, obviously quite proud of that. Arnie?
Yeah, we for the last year, unfortunately, we've had to talk a little bit about COVID. So might as well ask kind of what is the current situation in Israel, especially as it relates to your own lives, being able to play in practices and games, and also what's the fan situation as it relates to COVID. I think many of us on the Zoom know Israel has really led the world in terms of percentage of vaccinations and doing a phenomenal job. But just from a sports standpoint, how has it affected you? Why don't we start this time, Alex Harden? I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Alex Cohen, and then Shop.
I think the biggest thing, with all the vaccinations, we didn't have fans at the beginning of the season, and now that we're having vaccinations, you're allowed to, as long as you're vaccinated, to come into the games. I think we miss that kind of atmosphere. It's kind of hard to explain like how you play a game with no fans, but we've been doing the best we could to still continue to compete and do our job. So I think it was just interesting. The whole COVID year has been interesting, and everyone's just trying to adapt. So that's the best thing that I can say that we're doing.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. It was a very different atmosphere going into the games, and it just kind of being the two teams. I play in Ramallah, and we're lucky enough to have a really big fan base. And I think that's one of my favorite things about playing for this team is having that support every game. And to not have that in the beginning of the season was very different. But it's exciting now as we're heading into the playoffs, and having more people be able to come to games and hopefully in a safe way has made a huge difference.
Yeah, for me, I've been here this whole time. They came in when things started to get better, but in the summer, Israel was on full lockdown, so we couldn't get in the gym, we couldn't practice, we couldn't get ready the same way we wanted to. So it was hard we had to run outside and stay 500 meters like close to the house. So it was really hard training for the season, but I think once like after the first lockdown and the second lockdown, when things started opening back up, it started to be better. Israel was very strict about the COVID situation, so everything was closed. We couldn't go anywhere, so it's literally just being in the house and going to practice. But now, as everyone is getting vaccinated, things are open back up, and we have fans at the games, and it's really fun to play again in front of fans.
Right. That's awesome. So let me ask you this. Carole Nuriel wrote, you spoke very beautifully, Carole, about the power of sport, right? We see it as a great equalizer, but it's also a great revealer, as we're seeing now. We have these three fantastic women. We have an American Jewish woman, we have an African American woman, and we have an Arab Christian Israeli, right? Very different worlds. And I think what I'm interested in is the incredible diversity of athletes that actually come to compete in Israel, right? There are more of all of you on many, many teams. And I'm just curious what your expectations were, and how does that measure up to your actual experience? And you've all been here now for quite a number of years. So that denotes something that's good here about competing, getting paid, and being in a good environment. Who would like to start with that?
I can
So, yeah, please, Shad.
Go ahead, Shad.
Since I've lived here all my life, I'm actually the only Arab Christian Israeli in the league. There's not many of me, but I think for us Arabs in Israel, sports come second. First is education, and it's just a culture thing. So it's not a lot of Arabs in the league because everybody goes to school first. Everybody has to, and it's not like college here where you can do school and basketball at the same time. I just chose a different route, and I was lucky enough to have supportive parents where they come from the same background, and they know how much sport is important, like in your life. So they supported me. But for me it's been great to see and to have like Americans come here and to have Jewish Americans come here and all of us playing together. And it's no difference when we're on the court. We're all just playing for the same purpose. So it's been, for me, it's good.
Has it provided an opportunity for you to learn about each other's cultures? Alex, you come from, where did you grow up? Alex
Alex
Harden.
Hart?
Alex
Okay.
Harden. Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Central Illinois, Springfield. It's pretty diverse. I think that coming over into any country, you get to learn and see the atmosphere of every culture. I think as much as you try, like that's the biggest thing. If you try to learn about other cultures, you'll do that. So I think that's my biggest goal is every time I come here, I try to learn about my teammates and how they grew up because although they may all be Jewish, they all grew up differently. And there's
Yeah.
levels to religion inside of that. So that's just always interesting. And I just try to be tolerant and understanding because I'm a Christian. So it's just understanding where everyone gets their views from and respecting where they are and where they are supposed to be.
And do you feel like yours are respected in return?
Yeah, I don't think that we actually have the religion talk often. I think it just kind of comes up with the culture and fact that like Shabbat, like we can't practice Friday after Shabbat, like during Shabbat time. So I think that's a thing that doesn't exist in America. We work all the time. There's no days that are off. Like we have weekends, but that's depending on what you do. So I think just adjusting to their culture, I think that determines a lot more than anything.
Yeah, I guess I can say from my perspective, I grew up, I had a bat mitzvah, I went to synagogue growing up, but I was also lucky enough to have a Lutheran mother who introduced us to all holidays. So we celebrated everything growing up. We're really blessed to have a really good understanding of both religions. And when I came here, I mean, a little bit as to what Alex said, it's cool because I was brought up Jewish, but we didn't necessarily have Shabbat dinners. We had different customs and traditions for the holidays and things like that. So be able to come here and as a team, I know we celebrate Christmas together, even though the majority of our team is Jewish and we celebrate. We are lucky enough to be welcomed into people's homes for Shabbat and for holidays. So I've been really lucky and blessed to be on teams where everyone's really welcoming and accepting of all of our religions.
So I'm gonna follow that with a similar question, but I'm just curious. Living in Israel, Israel is not unlike every country in the world. It deals sometimes with discrimination issues. It's dealt with racial issues and social justice. Obviously, the political environment in Israel is always there and important. Can you compare kind of playing in the U.S. and how you and your teammates dealt with societal issues, and now playing and living in Israel and how you deal with issues that may come up within the state of Israel? I mean, is it talked about? Is it something that that the players are anxious to get involved in? I'm just curious from that front. And any of you could jump in on this. And we don't have to have, for every question, not all three of you need to answer if you don't want to. But if you'd like to answer that, please jump in.
I can say that politics here is a very sensitive subject because people come from very different backgrounds. So people try to stay, when it comes to sport, people try to stay away from it because I think sports is the only place left where you can actually focus on the sport and not on politics. So I think people really try to avoid these kind of conversations, but also you have to be acceptant of other people's views and ideas or what they believe in. I know that I have really good friends that we have completely different political views and obviously different religion, and we get along just fine. So I think that's the beauty in sport, that you can come from different backgrounds, you can have different beliefs, you can have different political views, but you can still get along and be friends, and it's okay. It doesn't have to come it doesn't have to hurt the team or hurt the relationship you build with the person. But I think I don't know. I think I like me being the only Arab, I get asked a lot, especially if I'm on a national team or if I get interviewed by the media, I get asked a lot political questions. Um, but I've, people been accepting to what I have to say, what my views been so far. So
Right. So how do you feel about that? Actually, I'm curious. How do you feel about that? Because I think it comes, don't you feel it comes from a genuine curiosity?
for the most parts, yes. Sometimes I feel like they trying too hard to get something out of from me, but this is the media, so that's their job. Um, but sometimes, like when it comes from my teammates or from my friends, I know it's genuinely like they curious just to know and understanding where I come from.
Right. Right. So you feel like the general public, there is a general acceptance about who you are, where you're from, and what you represent.
I mean, I think it's half and half. Like I know a lot of times if there's an article about me, if I go to the comments section, it's gonna be some people are gonna say bad stuff about me just because I'm Arab, and some people are just gonna be supportive and not talk about the fact that I'm Arab. So I think it's with anything. I think with everywhere and anywhere is the same thing. So it's just you have to choose what you look at and what you and who are the people that matters and who the people are that's going to support and understand the situation and move on with it.
Right. I'm just curious. You said you talked about a cultural point, which we all deal with in our culture. We look at actually Jewish female athletes, not only from America, which the numbers aren't great, as we know, Alex Cohen, but also around the world. And you mentioned in your culture, right? There's not a lot of positivity about young Arab women playing sports. What's going on the male side? I know, as I shared with the women, my son's playing in Israel right now, and he actually has an Arab, at least one. He could have more Arab Christians on his team, and it's a beautiful mix of people from around the world. So I'm just curious: are the young men, boys, encouraged to go out and play?
I think in the men's league, there's only one Arab guy, one Christian Arab guy that's playing in the first division. Um, I think more so than encouraging people in, like the way the Arab culture look at sports is something you do for fun and not your career. So it's an extra that you do. But school and finding a job that's going to support you and your family is more important. So the emphasis is as soon as you finish school, you have to get to go to university and start your career. Um, but now I think it's changing. The culture is changing. Is more younger women, like Arab women, that's getting into sports and taking it seriously. In a second division, there's three Arab teams. So it's really nice to see that it's changing and people are more open to it now, and they actually investing in it and want to be professional athletes. So I think it's great that it's changing.
Arnie?
I'm gonna bring all of you back a little bit so we could get a little bit more background on your Israel-U.S. connection. So Alex Harden, you were an incredible player at Wichita State, the all-time leading scorer in the history of the program. Alex Cohen, a phenomenal center and player in the Big Ten and Northwestern, somebody that I had the privilege as my alma mater to watch and was so proud of you. And Shad, a player doing the reverse migration, coming from Israel to the United States, played, I think, JC ball, and then went to Northwestern State in Natchitoches. And again, I just want to say your athletic director, and we can have them open and shadow later, but your athletic director is on with you and very proud of you. But all different transitions here. So Alex Harden, first of all, my question to you is, what made you go to Israel? I know you played 1 year in the WNBA, were a second round draft pick, and then I think you went to Portugal first, if I saw, and then Israel. And then Alex Cohen, you made Aliyah right after graduating and went to Israel. And then Shad, what made you want to come to the U.S. and what enticed you to Northwestern State? So Alex Cohen, why don't we start with you, and then we'll do Alex Harden and then Shad.
Yeah, so I guess my first taste of Israel was in 2009, where I was a part of the Maccabi team, the junior team, where we were able to come and win gold that year. And like I said, was my first taste of Israel, and was here for 3 weeks. And truly, I fell in love with it. Had such a great experience. And then finished high school, went to Northwestern, and started to learn a little bit more about the opportunity to make Aliyah, come here after graduating and play in the league here. So I'm a little different than both Shad and Alex in regards to how I work in this league. So as Alex is considered like a foreigner, where there's only allowed 3 on each team, because I made Aliyah, am considered an Israeli. So there can be unlimited Israelis on the team. And so I'm with making Aliyah, I've had that great opportunity to play here and be on the national team with Shahid. But I didn't know where exactly my career was going to go when I began. Kind of told myself, play a few years, reevaluate, see how you feel. But I know Shad will laugh at this, but I've joked many years, oh, this is my last year. Oh, this is my last year. I've threatened retirement a few times just because, being away from home after so many years is difficult. We're away from our families for 6-7 months out of the year. And I've been fortunate enough, because I've been here for so long, make a lot of friends here. And so Israel has kind of become my second home, and why I'm so comfortable coming back each year. So after 6 seasons, even if I've thought about playing somewhere else in another country, I love it so much here. I keep coming back.
Oh, okay. Alex Harden, there you are. Tell me, what did you expect of Israel, and what is the reality of it? How do they match up for you?
I can honestly say I didn't have that much expectations. Like, being a foreigner, I just came to see what the country is. I try not to look too much into researching it ahead of time, because I didn't want a warped view of what I thought it should be, and just take it as what it is. I was very happy that they all spoke English. English is very popular here, so that's actually a very smooth transition as far as coming from America, where almost all of us are a one language speaking. And for other cultures and countries where they speak multiple languages, English still not being one of those. So it's actually been very good, in which all my coaches speak English and my teammates speak English. So it's easier to navigate and understand. It's warm. I think that has a huge part in why a lot of us come back to Israel, is that the weather's nice. A lot of other countries are cold because we play in the winter. So the weather and the proximity of all the games, like everyone's within, except Haifa and Shad, everyone's within a 25, 30-minute drive. So all of those combinations makes for a great place to be overseas, because you don't feel alone, even though we are away from family.
Right. So that is a concern for a lot of especially women basketball players who go overseas. They are lonely, right? It's tough when you end up in the Czech Republic or Turkey or something, even Russia. Good situations, but can be a little lonely. Are you isolating?
Very.
Yeah. So that's kind of good. Here's a question that came from Greg Burke. I like it a lot. Of all the qualities, so all of you were student athletes. Which one has benefited you the most as a professional athlete? Well, so what did you take from your collegiate career that you brought to your professional career? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a basketball thing, but you felt like really is continuing to help you grow as an athlete and a person. Shad, are you jumping in on this?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think for me, being a student athlete, you have to hold yourself accountable, and you have to make sure you're doing the right thing. When you come overseas and when you become a professional, it's easy to just do whatever, because there's nobody's telling you what to do all the time, like in college. So you can literally do whatever you want. But I think the accountability that I learned being a student athlete and holding myself accountable and knowing what I need to do in order to get to where I need to be, I think is the best thing that I've got from college that's helping me now in my career.
That's excellent. Anybody else have anything they want to share on this one? If not,
I guess for me, for any 18-year-old heading off to college, there's a newfound sense of independence. And I think, I mean, it's a lot of people's first time away from home. It's a completely different experience. And I think that learning that as an 18-year-old going off to college was that first step for me. I mean, I went to Northwestern, which is an hour and a half away from Milwaukee. So in reality, I got jump in the car, go home, and at any time I wanted, but still had that first taste of independence. Now it's a little bit more difficult to jump on a plane and go home, but to fly halfway across the world, you have to know what to do with that independence. I think to piggyback off of what Shai was saying, you have to hold yourself accountable. There's a lot of time, you know, we have practice maybe 2 hours a day, and you kind of have to figure out what else you're going to do within that time frame. So lifting, getting your body right, but then also we are lucky enough to be in this amazing country, and also getting the opportunity to explore and to meet new people, and to have these experiences that we're so lucky to have as professional athletes overseas, where a lot of people don't get this opportunity. So taking that independence and trying to figure out exactly how to spend your time and make it worthwhile.
sure, absolutely.
Let me ask all of you, Alex, Harden, I know a little less about your background, but we'd love to hear about it. Kind of who were your role models, and talk about your parents. Alex Cohen, I know your father was really a great basketball player in the state of Wisconsin, and Shad, your parents are both basketball instructors and educators. Talk about the role that your family played in your development, both as basketball players, but even more importantly as young women growing up and now leading to a professional career and ultimately a career away from basketball.
I think for me, growing up in a basketball family helped a lot. My parents were always very supportive. I had to go outside of Nazareth to play on a Jewish team, because the Jewish team was always the better team in the area. So my parents used to drive me everywhere. They took so much time driving me places, which I never took for granted. But as a kid, I know that they took me all the time. They would take me to Tel Aviv and back, which is almost 2 hours from Nazareth. They always were very supportive, and when the idea of me going to college came up, they were also very supportive, which is not very normal here, because I was only 18, just finishing high school, and they gonna send me, across, like, in a different side of the world, basically, by myself. I didn't speak. I knew English, but I didn't speak it very fluently. So for them to trust me enough and to believe in me and let me go follow my dreams I can never thank them enough for letting me do that. And I think, as being far away from home, they still made me feel like I still felt loved and supported, even though I was very far away from them. And now that I'm back here, they don't ever miss a game. They come to all my games, no matter where the game is at. So I think they shaped me to be who I am today, and I think they raised me the right way, to where they trusted me to go even to the States by myself, and they knew I was gonna go do what I need to do and come back. And I just can't thank them enough for building me and helping me be who I am today.
It's fantastic. Can I jump in a little bit to gender equity here, if I could? We all look at Israel and say, wow, both the young men and young women all serve in the army equally, side by side. And yet on the basketball court, do you feel like your women players in Israel are as valued as the men players in Israel?
Not even close.
Okay. Thank you for saying that, by the way.
It's actually, it's hard to see. We don't get the same anything, really.
Right.
all their, like in our games, they choose one game a week to put on TV, while all the men's games are on TV, all the games. They don't miss one game that's not on TV. They have a lot of fans. Their gym, the facility they get, we don't get the same facility. Even though we have a men's team in Haifa that plays in a really, really nice gym, we don't play in the same gym. If you turn on the TV right now, you will see all the men's team in every commercial. You would not see anything about women's basketball. Maybe one commercial after 10 minutes.
And what, Alex, Alex Harden, you see the same thing? I see Alex Cohen saying, yes, I'm living this. Alex Harden, are you seeing that as well?
I mean, I don't know that it's any different in any world.
Yeah.
Like, I think
But
men always.
we're not excusing that though, right?
No, for sure. You're not excusing it. And it's frustrating to see because we do the same work they do. We've been playing as long as they have. We have the same set of skills that they do. But because they're men, you decide to go watch a game. And my thing is, I tell people all the time, just come and watch a girls' game and then make a decision. Stop saying hypotheticals.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I love to tell this story when I was the commissioner of the WNBA and I would go into these arenas and I'd have all these fans and these guys would say, oh, these women can't play and blah. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. How many games have you been to? And they said 0. And I said, well, great, because that's who you are in my eyes right now. You're a 0. And I collected a whole group of men who I called the zeros. I said, once you see the game, then you can tell me whether you're still a 0. And I would say, what, 90% of the time, at least? They were no longer zeros, right? Once you experience the game, it's really special. But it's more than that, Alex Cohen, isn't it, when we talk about gender on the court? Because it seems to me that if we don't value women and the excellence and the value that they bring to their profession, how do then they get treated in the business world?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have been in the business world. I retired for about 9 months from basketball. Got a job in sales, which is a very heavily dominated male industry. And just seeing the comparisons in both that world and the basketball world, it's interesting. I don't want to say I expect it because that's kind of sad to hear, but things don't even surprise me anymore. All the things that we've seen with the WNBA, or excuse me, with the NCAA and the women's tournament this year, like it's not super surprising. I know Shahid can understand this year for the national team with COVID and everything. This was a pretty big deal for us. So I've been on the national team for about a year now, which has been a really great opportunity, but was really disappointed in November. Similar to the WNBA bubble and the NCAA bubbles, with the national teams, we fly to different countries and we're in somewhat of a bubble. So we go there, we're in the hotel, we go from the hotel, we go to the gym, we go from the gym back, and that's pretty much where we were. So in Greece, which in a normal world is an 1.5-hour flight from Israel, maximum, 1.5-hour flight. We had a 12-hour travel day?
Even longer. We had to lay over and wait for more than 8 hours
in the airport
with COVID.
With COVID, and we're on two flights with the connection. Now the men's team, not only 2 weeks later, had a private plane to Spain. So that'll tell you kind of where Israel is with gender equality within sports, and that was pretty frustrating because in addition to that, it kind of tells you, well, in a normal world, it's not fair. But in a COVID world, where we coincidentally were on a plane with multiple people with COVID, which means we had to quarantine for 2 weeks, which means we potentially had to miss games, where men, they weren't even put in that situation. We were in a position where we couldn't work because we weren't valued as highly as men.
Right. So, and we saw that the NCAA, where the men got the PCR test, which was the highest quality grade COVID testing, and the women got a lesser test. So we're seeing that consistently. And the question is, I think I told Arnie this, but last week I had the opportunity to have this conversation with Billie Jean King, who, in terms of people, at the top of at the front of the line and creating social justice for over 40 years, we talked about this, right? Do we think this is a same old, same old? Is this a new time, or are we really about to create change? And in that vein, we have how many people on this call? 65? Alex Harden, Alex Cohen, and Shad Aboud. How can you help lead us to a better world that values women? I know you're worried about your stats and your team, but you're in a very visible place that shows just how beautiful, strong, and smart women can be and can contribute. And I'm just curious, with your teammates, you guys have this conversation?
I think as athletes, and I've talked about this before, I think in 2021, we're in a very interesting situation where with social media, our voices can be as loud as ever. And I think we've seen a lot of professional athletes be able to share their voices and their opinions, whether it's from a social justice standpoint, whether it's from a political standpoint. The world, I guess, is our oyster as far as voicing our opinions. And I know in the States for us, we've seen a lot of professional athletes get the opportunity to do this. And I think people are starting to listen. So I think there's only room for improvement. And I hope that as athletes, we can continue to use our voices to make change.
Definitely, I agree with Alex, and I know that I'm trying to do whatever I can in my community to have, for one, to have more female athletes get to where they need to be and have the same opportunity. And I think, just like Alex said, we need to use our voices. And I think I go to different schools and different teams and talk to younger Arab women and tell them that they can get to where I am now, and they can do that. They just need to say that they want to, that's what they want to do. And I think like the society will respect women and appreciate women in sports when we stand on what we believe in, and we voice what we think and what we deserve. And I think the change is coming.
Okay. Having belief is actually a fundamental foundation for making it happen. So I'm glad to hear that, Shad. Arnie, did you have a question?
Yeah, let me ask Shad and Alex Cohen a specific question. Alex Cohen, you really first got the taste of sports in Israel through the Maccabi. I think everybody on this call, because we are the organization that that is involved in the Maccabi. Talk about that experience and what it was like for you, both on the basketball court, but just being in Israel for those few weeks. And Shad, one of the questions that came before today from a guy named Noah Manley, who actually, Alex Cohen is a Northwestern grad. He wanted me to tell you because he knew your teammate Naf Kadem, all right, in Northwestern. But the question, Shad, is that he asked is there a cultural difference as far as how people view sports within the Arab Christian community versus the Arab Muslim community? Is there any cultural difference? And I mean, you talked about education being the priority within the Christian community. Is there any difference one way or the other as it relates to the Muslim community in Israel?
It's a tough question because it really depends on. It just depends on the area, but I think in Arabs, like an Arab community in general, education come first. I think the Muslim community, they're more strict on building, just going into the education, building a family, and the woman staying in more reserved, if that's the word. But I think it's changing now. Like I said before, there's 3 Arab teams in the second division, and two of the 3 teams is from a Muslim village. So I know majority of the players on the team are Muslims. So I think the change is coming even in the Muslim community and in the Christian community when it comes to female athletes and sports and women.
And Alex, you want to talk about Maccabi?
Sure. Yeah, as a 16-year-old coming to Israel for the first time, I really didn't have a lot of expectations. As I said, I was raised Jewish and got a taste in Hebrew school, things like that, and in the house. But I think coming to Israel is a completely different experience. I think my eyes were really open to a lot of different things when I came here, and to be a part, as Donna, you mentioned before, there's not a lot of Jewish athletes. I mean, where I'm from, especially in Milwaukee, I wasn't really familiar with a lot of Jewish athletes growing up. I know today there's a lot more, but I think I was the only Jewish athlete in women's and girls basketball growing up. So to be a part of a whole team and to see a whole Olympics, if you will, of Jewish athletes was really cool to me to see as a 16-year-old. And then to get that taste of Israel that's ultimately led me here 6 years later to play professionally here. So I think that 3 weeks really put a stamp in what like my life journey was going to be. So looking back, I'm so thankful that I had that opportunity because it has led me here.
Right. And it's awesome. And I guess when I think about all this talk about social justice and feeling like an other, you know, what percentage, Arnie, are Jews of the world population, or even in America? I mean, where I live in Jacksonville, Florida, we're like less than 1%, maybe less than 0.5%. So there's a part of me, right? A part of all of us probably that's always felt like an other. And, Alex Harden, not to put you totally on the spot, but you are a woman of color in another country, right? And what it makes me feel like is I want to put my arms around you so that you don't feel like you're another, which is an experience that I feel like I've carried my whole life, even though I'm a white woman. Do you know what I mean? Because my heritage has always made me different because there's so few of us, right? We've been kind of, I don't know how I would want to actually say, but we have been identified and scorned upon since like the history of time, right? And so I'm just curious, as you come here, how do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like you're isolated? Is the basketball keep you enough? Is there a culture that like envelops you? And I think this is something that I would want us to know, just because we want you to feel like you're welcomed. You know what I mean?
I would have to say, like, at the end of the day, I always look different. So it's one of those things where you walk out of the airport and you get 17 eyes and you're just like, okay,
right.
Am I taller? Am I darker? And it's one of those things where you just kind of have to shrug it off. And being here in Israel with all the teams as close as they are, a lot of the Americans who do come over are African-American females. So we do a lot of things together, like even with the guys, we do a lot of American things to just keep us so we don't feel as isolated. But there's always going to be those experiences where you go to the market or you go somewhere and people feel uncomfortable around you, or they give you an extra space, which is very rare because they don't do like personal space here. But you feel they don't understand it. Like, but you can feel they don't feel comfortable, or when a little kid walks by, or they're just like, because they've never seen it before. And to an extent, like, it's okay. Like, and you have to be okay with how people feel about you, as long as it doesn't turn into a situation in which we have to have a discussion or talk about it, or I have to be in a situation where I feel uncomfortable. I allow people to view me as whatever they view me as. And they just keep their that makes them comfortable. And that's okay with me, as long as they don't make it to where it's aggressive or anything where we have to make an adjustment on how I move around the city.
Right. Because I think we did a session with African-American basketball players in Israel who felt that there was less racism in Israel, that the translation of race and interaction was different. Do you feel a difference as opposed to America, which is obviously has it, we just have our own definite, distinct issues that as we know?
I think as long as you're a foreigner in a country, it's kind of hard to have a complete native experience in which you feel the whole volume of racism or anything to an extent, like to a full extent of what the country is. I've had one incident in which it became an issue with me being a Black woman in a game, but like besides that, I feel like I don't feel any more or any less safe here than I do in any country that I've ever been in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just know that a lot of the women of color, the Black women that played when I was at the WNBA, they loved it in Israel, right? They came home, they spoke Israel. There was a warmth for them and a connectivity. And I think there's a lot of players that just stay in the country, right? They just don't ever come home because there's that kind of connectivity. Obviously, a lot of players do come home, but I guess we're just interested in terms of, you know, from your point of view. And I'm so happy you're sharing that with us. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've been here for years. I've been here for 5 years. So there's that sense of this is like a second home, and there's a lot of respect and love that I have for this country. And at the same time, it's still not home. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. But the English, the weather, and you guys are probably the most hospitable country as far as if you ask somebody where you want to go, or they're very helpful into getting you to where you want to be or where you need to be. So I think that also plays a lot into us feeling comfortable here. Like if I ask, how do I get to the store? There's 4 or 5 people willing to help me to get there.
Yeah, that's really great too. So you feel like you're part of a community, a valued part of the community, other than we're women basketball players, so we've got a way to go on that. Arnie, you want to take us home here?
Yeah, I'll take us home. This has been just a delightful hour, and I can't thank all of you enough. I just want to say something and then leave with one parting question for each of you. But you know, the beauty of sports, as you've kind of heard now for the last hour, is the common theme. The beauty of sports is bringing people together. And I remember a few years ago, we were able to take 14 former NBA players to Israel. And on a Saturday night after Shabbat, which was also the start of Ramadan, we did a basketball clinic involving Israeli Arab youth, Jewish youth. It was one of the most beautiful things. And these were African-American men that were teaching the clinic. One of the most beautiful things. And that's the power of sports. And I think all of us can learn from that. So my parting question to all of you is, what's next in your life? And Alex Cohen, I know you have a great interest in autism, and I've followed your leadership on that. And by the way, you're the Tom Brady of Israeli basketball, so you can never retire, okay? You've got years and years left in you. But just really quickly before we end, what for each of you is kind of next in the pathway of life?
I think for me, the thing that would make me the happiest is for Shad and Alex to play on the same team one of these years. But here's hoping for that. We're trying to get Alex to stay here forever. But for me, I foresee myself coming back for another season. Looking forward to it again next year, but I have a lot of interest, as you know, Arnie, in a variety of things. I do some work in remotely in nonprofit now for a small nonprofit in Grafton, Wisconsin, where I'm working with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I'm doing that work now, and could foresee myself doing that in the future. Also, I don't know if I'll ever be able to leave sports behind. So maybe incorporating that into a future career, but for the time being, I'll be here. So looking forward to another season here next year.
That's fantastic. So first of all, thanks to all of our guests who have joined us. They're rather quiet today, I guess. There's Tal Brody, who said it was an excellent program. Great that it started at 20 Israel time and not 20 USA time. We got that, Tal. We appreciate that. And I think we have to ask Tal, being he is who he is, to help us out on this whole women's thing. This women's equity, it is time, right? It is definitely time, and time is a wasting, right? Thank you, Kira, and everyone's kind comments. Arnie, for your vision, thoughtfulness, energy to bring everyone together, from Milwaukee to Israel to the ADL to Alex, and of course, Shad. Give all of your families our best and our gratitude. Thank you, everyone. this has really been enjoyable. Mr. Burke, thank you for joining us as well. And we will see you in 2 weeks. At our regularly scheduled bat time, 8 o'clock in the evening. Girls, you're gonna have to stay up, or else we can start sending you links and you can watch in your spare time. Clearly, you can tell Arnie and I are just unavoidably precious, right, Arnie?
Absolutely. It's been a
Hey,
great,
Arnie.
it's been a great show, everybody. Yes.
I want to add one very quick thought. Ironically, or maybe appropriately, today is National Student Athlete Day. So to Alex and Shahad, you guys are exactly what we celebrate today. What you did during your time as a college student athlete, but what you continue to do, not just because you're professional athletes, but because of what you continue to do to impact so many people and so many lives. So we really appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks with another
Right.
great guest, and
I
everybody
don't know
have
if
a
they'll
very
ever be
safe
as
couple
good as
weeks.
I don't know if they'll ever be as good as these women, Arnie, but Alex Harden, you see, it was pretty okay. It worked out. You did
It turned out okay.
You did beautifully. Thanks, Shad, Alex, and
Great show,
everybody else.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody, for
Thank
joining us.
Mackenzie.
Yeah, we'll keep the Zoom open for a bit. If anybody wants to stay on and say hello or ask any more questions, we'll keep the Zoom open. Thank you again, ladies.